guys, it's me, Chelsea Fagan, your host, founder and CEO of The Financial Diet, and woman who loves talking about money. And welcome to an all-new episode of The Financial Confessions. I am here today with a very special and unique guest, and that is my smoothie. I've gotten really into smoothies lately. Those watching on YouTube can tell it's a gorgeous light pink spring color. I'm just going to give you guys a hot tip. We don't come here for smoothie recipes, but that's what we stay for. I usually am not a smoothie girl, but I've been getting into them a lot because they're really good to have when I'm filming and, I want to consume sustenance, but I can't be just out here chewing. This isn't an ASMR video. Right now I'm doing strawberries, your milk of choice, a scoop of peanut butter, and vanilla protein powder. Is it healthy? I leave it up to you guys to decide. It is delicious and it keeps me full for a long time. So that's your tip of the day. But in all seriousness, I am here with someone that is not familiar to a lot of you guys, but how should I put this? But you guys are aware of her. You've felt her fingerprints all over so many things that you've consumed here at TFD, but you simply have not encountered her in the flesh, except for on very rare occasion on like our TikTok. She did a video once about a horrible job experience that I will link to in the description. But she actually produces quite a lot of what we do here. She's the creative director here at TFD. She and I basically tag team running this YouTube channel. She kind of oversees a lot of the editorial we do. She produces a lot of the shows that you guys have seen here. Like we had Making It Work for a long time. We have The Money Conversation now. Basically, she kind of makes things happen. She's also often behind the camera. Usually she's the one who's filming my Tuesday show in my humble abode. So sometimes you'll even hear her let out a giggle when I say something really, really funny, which, let's be honest, happens a lot. But she's actually here today because in addition to doing that stuff, she also is a big part of our society. The society at TFD is the YouTube membership program that I've shouted out a lot here and is what happens when you click the join button. Obviously, one of my 4 Tuesday videos every week is exclusive to those members. We have a Discord, we have a book club, which she actually hosts herself every month, and lots of other really cool goodies. And we actually are expanding that to include Patreon as well. So we'll still be on YouTube. You can still join by hitting the join button. And if you are a member of the society, you will still, get all of the goodies that you've become accustomed to. But if you prefer Patreon, we also will now have a Patreon option for our society that includes all of the stuff from YouTube, plus some extras, which is really, really exciting. So she's joining us here today to answer some of our most frequently asked questions, both from society members, which will be prioritized, but also ones that we just get on the channel constantly. She's here all the time, but rarely in this very seat, so it's very exciting to have her here. She's also been at the company for
6.5 years.
I mean, longer than I've been alive, I say. So, colleague, friend, mother to 2 cats that look like siblings but are not, Holly Trantham.
Hi.
Hi, Holly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is a very odd experience. I've never been in this from this angle on any of our shows.
And thanks to ZocDoc for supporting TFC. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who take your insurance and are available when you need them. Go to ZocDoc.com/TFC and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today.
I did forget I filmed that episode that you mentioned about the nightmare boss about 6 years ago, and I think my hair looks better now than it did then, so that'll be good to have a documentation of.
We've all gone through a glow up. There are so many videos that I have just erased them from my psyche because I was not looking my best. So obviously I teed up a little bit of what you do here at TFD, but can you talk a little bit about the book club specifically? Because that's something that we do at TFD every month that I think a lot of people don't know about and would probably love.
Yeah, so as Chelsea said, I run a lot of what we call the Society at TFD, which has been our YouTube premium membership program, and we are expanding into Patreon now, which is very exciting. But I find that sometimes on the YouTube platform, it's difficult to communicate even to existing members what's going on within the society because YouTube is not the most user-friendly platform. I think it's like not...
Drag them. It's
Sorry.
true.
I think it is not as intuitive as Patreon. It's not as intuitive as, honestly, other social media platforms. So when you do sign up for the society, if you are a member on YouTube, you can find all of the ongoing membership perks and all of the stuff that we have going on the membership tab. And that also will show up in your community page as members only posts. So every month we have, usually on the last Tuesday of a month, I host a Zoom book club with a bunch of our members. We've had a lot of people who've been recurring, so I recognize their names now, which is really exciting. And then at the beginning of the month, we vote on that month's book. And you can find that poll on the membership tab on our YouTube page. And we'll also now have the poll on our Patreon as well.
What's this month's book?
This month's book is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And last month we read Consumed by Aja Barber, which was really a great look at fast fashion and colonialism and the terribleness that is that industry. And we've also read books on millennial burnout, personal finance in other respects.
Rest is Resistance.
We read Rest is Resistance, which was a really great book and very short and very helpful for a lot of people. Definitely recommend that one. So yeah, if you are a society member, you get to vote, and I also put out a call to action for people to give book suggestions every month as well. So that's where I get a lot of the suggestions for the final 4 we vote on.
Love that. Also love a short book. Feel like not enough of those. Similar to not enough 90-minute movies.
Yeah.
No one's editing these days.
Truly. Also, I should note, if you can't, so we decide on the time of the book club on another poll with members. So we do them on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern because that's kind of what works for everybody the best. I get a lot of comments from people, especially who don't live in the U.S., that were like, could we do these at a different time? And unfortunately, I just do them at the time that works for the most people. But we do record them, and if you are a member, you get to see access to the recordings. There's also a thread where you can participate in conversations about the books, just in posting and commenting. So there's a lot of ways to interact with the book club, even if you can't attend the Zooms. But the Zooms are really I ask the questions and lead it, but it's really like conversation, and a lot of times we'll go off on tangents, and people will, talk about how what we're reading and applies to the context of their life, and it also it spurred a lot of really good, interesting conversations. I really love it.
That sounds wonderful. What is your favorite fiction book that you've read lately?
Oh my gosh.
Because I know we don't do that in the book club, just out of curiosity. Because this girl reads, let me tell you.
I read an embarrassing amount of historical romance. I just polished off. I've read every single book by Sarah McLean now.
Hell yeah.
Which are wonderful. So I definitely recommend her, just generally, especially the I can't remember the name of the series, but she's got this one series that's about these 4 people who run this gambling hell in 1830s London, and it's really good. But I really, really liked Babel, which a lot of people really, really liked last year, and it was one of the few non-romance books that I read, but it was light fantasy, historical fiction, which I really liked, and it was people you really cared about. Also had that dark academia vibe. I really loved it. I'm also not a fantasy reader, and it is not high fantasy. It's very minimal fantasy. So if you go into it expecting high fantasy and you like that, you wouldn't.
This is ignorant, but what is the difference between high fantasy and not high fantasy?
High fantasy is like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. So it's a whole different universe. This takes place during the Opium Wars at Oxford, but with this in this world there's some magic that happens, but in a very specific way. And also always an indictment of imperialism in the British Empire, and it's really good.
Okay, but we're not creating a whole other language.
No, I don't do that.
Listen, all my husband reads is 7,000 page books where there's a battle between 3 societies that never existed.
My husband has been reading the Wheel of Time series for the past year and a half, and that is all he's been reading because they're so freaking long. And I'm just I have so many books that I've read, this one I just talked about, that I want you to read, but he's I can't read anything else till I'm done with this.
The chokehold that Robert Jordan, author of The Wheel of Time, has on my husband and his whole family. Oh my God.
Even in death.
Even in death, he has a chokehold. And also his whole family, every year we're at the beach with them, they're just they're all reading it in French, obviously, for the most part. But it's just every man just sitting out there with a 1,000-page book cracked open. It's endless. Could not be me. So we're going to answer some questions here of the frequently asked variety and of the specific responses we got when we put out a call to action variety. And we're just going to kind of go through them and see what Ms. Trantham over here has to say, by the way, promised in the intro that she has 2 cats. Here's a photo for the people watching on YouTube. What are those cats' names?
Felix and Stormy.
Did you name them?
I did not name them because I think, especially in our context, I don't think I would have picked the name Stormy. I would have picked Felix.
Stormy Daniels?
Yeah. That's what everyone thinks of. But she's like, it's like very fitting for her. We call her like, Stinky Stormy, Stormy Wormy. It's like, yeah. It's very fitting. Anyway.
Stinky Stormy. Okay. Number 1 of 7,000. Okay. I'm newly in a relationship and struggling to budget for it. He's not as prone to staying in and making dinner, but I feel guilty if I don't pick up the bill often enough, but it's throwing my dining out budget way off. Any tips on how to budget for this / discussing with a partner whose finances aren't tied to yours at a level of marriage or even a long-term relationship?
It sounds like you really like this person you're dating, and that it seems like it's pretty serious if you're going out frequently enough that this is a concern. So I also, frankly, like, does he have a higher paying job than you? Is that something you've acknowledged? And if it's not something you've acknowledged together, that's probably a conversation you need to have. I do think, if he's really interested in pursuing a relationship with you and you personally like to stay in more, that's probably something you guys need to talk about. I think I've been in the situation, especially when I started dating my husband, where I was going out a lot more than I had been used to, because it's exciting to be dating somebody that, you like spending time with and you like going out on dates with. But he also picked up the check a lot more because he made a lot more money than me at the time. And I think that was fair. So I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, first of all, at this stage of the game, your finances should be totally separate anyway, so it shouldn't really matter what he's doing. But it sounds like the answer is you just got to say, hey, bud, I'm not trying to go out to restaurants as much as you are, so I'm not going to do that. And that's to keep my budget in check. If you want to keep going out to restaurants in addition to the ones we go to on your own dime, totally fine. And that's not your problem. But I think the bigger issue here, because again, at this stage, your finances shouldn't be combined anyway, so it shouldn't really matter what they're doing with their money. It sounds like the bigger problem is you're not necessarily setting a boundary of like, because maybe he can afford it and it's totally fine for him, but like, you're not setting the boundary of like, this isn't sustainable for my budget, so I'm not going to keep doing this.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I should note, like, is he the one who's suggesting these dates? Because I think that the person who suggests the date should be default the person who pays for the date.
Ooh, ruffling some feathers early on.
People are always like, there's always this like, who should pay for who should pick up the check for the first date? And I think the person who did the asking on the date should pick up the check.
Yeah, but if they're in a relationship, even at the early stages,
sure,
I feel like it's no longer the date logic.
Yeah, that's fair. But I do think, like, if it's always his idea to go out, then.
But again, I would say just say no.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like, because it's not sustainable necessarily in the long term that, like, if I happen to suggest, hey, do you want to go to a restaurant, that it's always entirely my responsibility to pay. However, like, I feel like if we both are agreeing to go, we're assuming that responsibility.
Yeah, but I would say no, it's like, this isn't in the budget right now. But if they're like, oh, I still want to treat you, then maybe that'll happen.
Yeah. Start extorting him. Okay. Do you think TFD will ever do any videos, not podcasts, okay, about mental health and how it affects how you use money? As someone with ADHD, I find that I handle and think of money in a very different way than the neurotypical people in my life. I feel like a video on that would be cool and useful. We've been trying to get a hold of a couple ADHD YouTubers for years and years, and to no avail.
But that would be on the podcast, right? Like, as a guest.
It would be, but I also would be very open to having like a mini series.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
I think that would be really cool. I don't think that it's necessarily something Chelsea could speak to in her own video, because it's not something, as far as I know, she has experience with. So I don't think I think that would be a great thing. I agree for us to have on the channel, and that's definitely a good idea. But I don't think it's something we could do. I think it was something we would want to have first-person experience with.
My ideal, because we do 3 videos a week that are not members only, or 3 videos a month that are not members only on the Tuesday show, would be to have like 3 different people who have 3 different mental health challenges talking about how they do money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be really good. And there are a lot of those channels out there. YouTubers can be fickle, though.
Girl, I swear to God, listen, some of my best friends are YouTubers. No, I'm kidding. I know I socialize with some YouTubers or post YouTubers, ex YouTubers. But never have we encountered, I mean, the degrees of like unprofessionalism, unreliability, just sheer chaos as when working with some YouTubers. Like, we've had YouTubers who just stopped responding to us completely when they owed us work. We've had ones that just entirely didn't show up to things, who, like, I mean, said and did insanely inappropriate things in the workplace. Like, I think a lot of YouTubers, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because, like, a lot of YouTubers just start from being sort of like, you know, people just talking in their bedroom to a camera, and maybe they're a little bit, you know, they're not in the professional space. They're not kind of used to that world, and it kind of, they just never have to get used to it to some extent. But it's been, and don't get me wrong, we have worked with some wonderful YouTubers, but it's run hot and cold.
Also, the ones that we've had the less than positive experiences with have ultimately not actually been people we've worked with for the most part.
For the most part. Occasionally we've had, and like also, you know, we recently had an interview guest cancel on us 2 minutes after the interview was supposed to start.
Not even like with a email, I got a decline to the invitation.
Decline to the invite.
With no explanation.
No explanation. Later, after inquiry of like, what happened here? Oh, this person's sick. Only to later that day post photos of themselves on vacation on the beach.
Yep.
Honestly, work, I say. Like, that's kind of that's kind of a flex, honestly. Like, I wish do you ever like, most of the time it seems like I would not want to be that way, but like occasionally I have that feeling of like, how rad would it be to like just not give a shit at all? Just like move through the world like that.
I feel like I had kind of a period of that when I was like 22, and then it didn't turn things, like, it didn't turn out well for me. Like I like had a couple like freelance clients that I kind of ghosted, and then I just like felt guilty about it completely because I like didn't have time to do it or whatever. And I just I'm like, I would never do that now. I think we've all learned from those kinds of experiences.
I one time quit a job. I was working at a coffee shop, to be fair, in DC, but I like quit the job 45 minutes before my shift that I was supposed to be there for my shift. And I was like, I don't feel well. I was at a David Guetta concert. Like, you could hear the David Guetta concert behind me. I was of course like drunk off my ass, like, you know, raving or whatever. I don't know what people do in David Guetta concerts, but I was just like on the phone. I was like, I can't come in. I'm sorry. I don't feel well.
Okay, I never did that. I just like stopped responding to an annoying Upwork client once. Like, that was about it. The extent.
Well, yeah. And then my boss called me and was like, never come in again, which was probably for the best. Rip that version of myself. Okay, a lot of people in my life are either extremely frugal or extremely joie de vivre about their money and their spending habits. Any advice on how to have chats with folks about moderation for both ends of the spectrum? I'm always nervous to come off as preachy, but I'd love to find a way to share what I learn on this channel.
Is joie de vivre an adjective?
We're gonna say we'll allow it.
Okay, great. I guess that means like laissez-faire, like
very like vibey.
Yeah, very, yeah. I just think, I don't know. Sometimes people are overly frugal as kind of a defense mechanism if they've been in places where they have not had a lot before, and also same with people who tend to overspend if they had a scarcity mindset from living through poverty or living through being broke for many years, like, and now they finally have freedom. Like, they might just be going overboard because they're like, oh, I can finally do stuff again. I feel like like with everything with money, it's kind of like having a conversation with them and being like, do you think that going out all the time or spending all of the time on this is actually fulfilling you? Or you could also, for the other people in your life, approach it as, sometimes this feels really limiting, the way that you, I guess you're also supposed to frame things as I statements though, right? Not just like pointing out what's bad about everybody. So
I'm going to take a different tack and say, unless it's affecting you, kind of not your beeswax, unfortunately. And listen, I am who I am and do what I do and talk about what I talk about. There are many people in my life who don't handle money in a way that I think is necessarily the best for them. But ultimately, that's not my problem, and it's not necessarily it wouldn't totally be appropriate for me to speculate on how they handle their finances or what I think is best for them. I think ultimately living in a way that is, balanced and aligned and productive and thoughtful bears its own fruits, right? And people will see that. Like it sounds like you're living in a way that's in a nice balance where you're neither really depriving yourself nor overdoing it, and that usually will show in a really good and aspirational life. And if people notice that, they can come ask you, what are you doing? What's the secret sauce? And if they ask you, I think you should be prepared to give thoughtful advice that's attuned to what you've been noticing. But I would not personally volunteer it. And more importantly, I think it can unfortunately be rather alienating when people do, because what is not expressed in this question is like, where is the financial privilege? Like maybe you have a much higher income than someone who lives in a really frugal way. Maybe they have responsibilities that you don't know about, right? Like they could be taking care of a parent. They could be, dealing with all kinds of expenses that aren't necessarily visible if you are just interacting with them in a social capacity. But I think ultimately part of just kind of growing up in general in friendships is understanding that and family relationships very much too, basically everyone except for your life partner with whom you are cohabitating financially, their journey is not for you to take on, and separating out what impacts you from what you would like for them in a vacuum on their own time is really, really important, because at the end of the day, we could make an endless list of things that we would maybe optimize for another person, but if it's not impacting us, then I think it's really the possible negative outweighs the good in terms of what you stand to get from it. That being said, if you really like the channel, part of the reason we create a lot of content that is not strictly educational in nature or sort of pragmatic in nature in terms of managing your finances is so that there are easy entry points, right? Like you can send a video that is more general, more commentary, that doesn't necessarily, you don't want to send a person a video that's like how to get your budget under control, because the person's gonna be like, that seems pointed. But you can send them entry points to it. You can talk about what you've kind of benefited from, but I would mostly say not your beeswax.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think I was starting to say something about making I statements, and I do think for me, I've noticed more of my friends are willing to talk about money now than they were used to in the past. And I think I kind of, it wasn't like I was scheming to get people to talk about it more, but I started being more open about my finances, but also what my husband makes. So my friends know not just what I make, they also know what my husband makes, so they know our household income, because that's going to make a very, very different impact on my life than what a lot of my friends have access to. And then also sharing things like what things cost in my life and how I'm able to save for things, and just being really open and sharing things that were exciting, or if something was difficult, talking about it. And I feel that has been a good way to open up conversations with people. And I have a lot of friends who make choices that I wouldn't make, but it's not really up to me to fix them for them. And I have tried bullying people into opening a Roth IRA or something in the past, and it doesn't really work if you're just telling them they have to make the decision for themselves.
Hard to picture you bullying someone.
Bullying in my way, lovingly bullying.
Any take on using Airbnb versus chain hotels when traveling? Airbnb can be cheaper per trip, but does gaining status through a hotel chain pay off in the long run? Also, from a social lens, it seems like both can be exploitative to the locals. I've always believed Airbnb to be the larger offender, but I'm curious to hear your opinions on the matter.
I feel Airbnb, I'm sure there are bad hotels and bad employers, but I feel generally Airbnbs are pretty terrible for...
Yeah, I think they're worse.
For the gentrification of neighborhoods and the tanking of the affordable housing market in a lot of places. Americans have kind of been ruining Mexico City, the digital nomad culture there. So I do think they're generally worse. I'm a hotel girl. I really prefer to just stay in a hotel. I know that sometimes you go travel for a longer period of time, and I know for that it is kind of nicer to have an Airbnb because you have a kitchen and everything. We'll go on 1-2 week trip a year or something, but we don't go away for like Chelsea said, I have cats, so we don't go away for months on end or anything, or weeks on end really. So I much prefer staying in hotels. I also think generally, especially if you're in the US and you're not staying in a private room Airbnb, you're staying in an actual whole home Airbnb, hotels are just as affordable for the most part now because of all the exorbitant like cleaning fees and stuff. That's not necessarily true when you go to Europe or something, but
oh, totally.
Here it's like kind of the same. So I'm like, why would I choose to have to throw all of the linens in the laundry and clean the entire apartment when I could just stay in a hotel?
My God, they have gotten out of control. Like my rule is if I'm staying longer than like a long weekend, like 4 nights, or if I'm traveling with more than one other person, I do an Airbnb because to your point, it's nice to have a kitchen after a while. But also if like we're doing 2 couples, it's usually better to do an Airbnb with 2 bedrooms than it is to do 2 separate hotel rooms. Plus you do get the common space, which is really nice to be able to hang out in. Yeah. So those are the 2 circumstances where I use an Airbnb. But they have gotten out of control with the like, you're paying all this money, you're paying an exorbitant cleaning fee on top of it, yet there's like, we've been to so many Airbnbs where there's like a full on 20 item list of things to do, and I'm just like, what is the cleaning fee for? Like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And like, so I'm going on a trip at the end of the week actually with a girlfriend, and we were running the numbers. We're going to New Orleans, and we were running the numbers of like Airbnb versus hotel, and like it's, you know, a good friend of mine, so we're sharing like a double hotel room, and like for the same price as like a very mediocre 1-bedroom Airbnb in a, you know, not super central neighborhood, we get like a big room at a really nice hotel with like a rooftop pool, super central. Like you get room service, you get all of those amenities. And like, so I do feel like, because I think Airbnb did the Uber thing where they like falsely deflated their prices through VC funding to like really dominate the market and get a huge part of market share. But I think now it's like definitely evened out.
Yeah, I mean, we plan a couple trips a year with different groups of people, either family or some of our, you know, friends from college, and we don't even use Airbnb for those anymore. We get like Vrbo or something because
VRBO.
Yeah, I think that all the ads say, is it VRBO? Because all the ads say Vrbo.
Is it called Vrbo? I'm here. Sources are saying beep 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 that it's called Vrbo.
Yeah, I also agree that's insane, but it is. I think that like we watch, it's either on Hulu or Peacock. I see the ads all the time, and it say Vrbo. Anyway. And those are definitely still cheaper than hotels, especially for like a group of 8 people or whatever, which is not my favorite style of vacation. Let's put that out there. But yeah, those things, you also have to like bring linens a lot of the time, and that's like not fun.
Who's bringing linens places?
People who rent things on Vrbo. Like you often have to bring, I agree, but I sometimes get overruled. So we don't always stay in like inns or whatever. But yeah, I definitely love a hotel, love a B&B, love an inn. I think especially if you like plan, like I'm also a very, very big planner. So like most of my vacations are planned at least 6 months in advance. Mm-hmm. And if you plan that far in advance, you can get pretty good deals. So
I want to take a quick pause and thank today's sponsor, ZocDoc. If there's one thing you should actually take the time to do, it's find yourself a good doctor, whether it's for your mental health, your yearly checkup, or a new dentist because you're still going to the same one from your childhood and realize you don't actually like them. Finding the right doctor should not be an overwhelming task. It should actually be the opposite. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, are available when you need them, and treat almost every condition under the sun. Instead of going to TikTok for medical advice, no shade because you know I love TikTok, it's just not where I nor you should be seeking out medical advice, I use ZocDoc, literally, I personally do use it, to find the right medical professionals, and you should too. Like I said, I actually use ZocDoc, and honestly, it has been really, really helpful to just keep that entire part of my life totally organized, as it's something that can easily feel overwhelming and become an item on your to-do list that just kind of lingers there forever and gives you anxiety. ZocDoc is honestly the GOAT. And if for whatever reason you're not feeling your best, finding the right care shouldn't take up all your time and energy. That's where ZocDoc comes in to help. Using their free app that millions of users rely on, you can find the right doctor that meets your needs and fits your busy schedule. Here in New York City, some doctors are booked up for weeks, if not months in advance, and that's not particularly helpful when you have something that needs timely attention. With ZocDoc, you can book an appointment with a few taps in their app and choose from thousands of patient-reviewed doctors and specialists, browse doctor profiles, upload and verify your insurance information, and get the care you need in one place. Go to ZocDoc.com/TFC and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then book a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/TFC. ZocDoc.com/TFC. Yeah, I think timing has to do with it because me and
Yeah.
this trip that I'm going on this week, it was pretty last minute comparatively. Like we booked like 3 weeks ago, and I think that also affects the prices.
Totally. But that's fun. It's fun to do things last minute. I don't know what that's like.
I usually don't. Wait, this is so unlike me because planned at the very last minute, which is very unlike me, but also like normally, you know me, I got my Excel sheet going with like every minute is planned down to the bone. And I have literally not exerted one brain cell's worth of effort for this. My friend is like a big New Orleans girly, so she has created a like minute to minute itinerary. And I'm like, I don't want to think about a god thing. I'm going to get on that plane. I'm going to have a Bloody Mary. I'm going to arrive there. I'm going to be like, take me to the hotel. Like, I don't know where we're going. Like, it's so unlike me. But I have a lot to do these days, so I just didn't have time.
I don't know what that's like. I don't think my husband's ever planned a trip. He's way too stressed out by the idea of it. And I do get a lot of pleasure from it, but I would love to someday have somebody plan something for me.
I'm excited for this. I do feel so bad. My husband doesn't consume my content, so he's not going to see this. But last year we went on a romantic anniversary trip to Charleston, and I was like I had other things going on, so I was like, you take it. You know, you plan the itinerary for the most part. And he was like, okay. And he doesn't not like to do it. He just knows that I like to do what I like to do. And I know Charleston pretty well. So I like knew what I wanted to do. I changed god near every one of his plans last minute. And he was like, I will never do this again. This was so unpleasant.
Yeah, I do feel like for traveling with Peter, that would happen for sure. But for other people, I would happily let them plan.
Totally. Man, rip that trip. I still had a great time, but I felt bad for him. Okay. What do you think of college? Personally, I think it's only worth it when you're 100% sure on what you want for yourself, not just going to college because you feel like it's a natural life progression, like getting married or having children. It's not a requirement, but our parents do make it sound like one.
I mean, it was definitely treated as a requirement in my household.
Not mine.
I know. And I think that's probably better for a lot of people. I think I was the right kind of kid to push towards college. I was pretty good at school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I did have a job like throughout. Like I worked as a receptionist throughout college too. So I did have some job experience like during that time. I guess if I didn't go to college, I would have just worked right away. But I don't know what I would have done. I guess like food service or the same kind of like receptionist thing. Yeah, I think.
Is it fair to say that like the two people you went to college with, like they both got bachelor's degrees and neither of them used them?
I have one of my very best friends. I would say probably didn't need to go to college for what he's doing. He's becoming very successful as a performer. I know he's taken some performing related classes, but that was not what he went to college for. And at our school, it wouldn't have really been like that great of a program anyway. It was just like his state school, so that's where he went. So
Let's
yeah,
shout out the school.
I went to the University of Vermont, which I loved. It's a great town. So here's the thing. I knew I wanted to go to college. I didn't really care where I wanted to go. I didn't really care. I knew I wanted to study film studies, which I did, but then I also became an English major because I liked that way better. But, and I do use my degree. Like I got several internships with my degree. I worked on the paper. I definitely got some good experience. At school. Like I don't regret it. I loved school and I loved Vermont, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in Atlanta and I wanted to get the hell out of the South. And I at the time was a little bit narrow-minded, I think, about, politics and the country and the narrow-mindedness of the South. And really that exists everywhere. It exists in Vermont too. So I used college as a means to go get somewhere else. But that was also a very privileged position to be in because my parents let me. Not only were they paying for my school, they let me decide wherever I wanted to go because that's how my mom was raised. And that's how all of her, her parents paid for all of her sisters' schools and they all went wherever they wanted to go. But it was just you have to get a degree because that's what you do. I don't think I necessarily need a degree for what I do now. No. And Chelsea doesn't have a degree. So obviously our jobs have a lot of overlap. So I think that there's sometimes we equate having a degree with being a smart person, and that's just not true. My friend who I was talking about who didn't need his degree, I think at all, he wasn't nearly as academically motivated. He's bright and he got by just fine in his classes because that he could, but I don't think he ever got any like validation from academia, and I don't think that ultimately. I don't know. I don't want to speak for him. Like I don't want to say he regrets it and he regrets what he spent on it, because I don't know if that's true. Like he met a lot of friends there too and everything, but it's like, yeah, I think. But I do think a lot of employers are kind of narrow-minded about having a degree. So I do think like a lot of jobs still require it, even if you don't actually need to use it. So hopefully there's more and more jobs like TFD. Like we don't put a degree requirement on any of our job postings.
No, and I don't look at them. I don't really care.
Yeah. Also, if I see people who are like 28 and have their GPA and their resume, I'm like, can you take that off? Like, it's a little, like, and especially if it's not even that good, like, just take it off. Like, I don't need to know that you got a 3.2.
Totally.
I mean, that's a perfectly good GPA. But yeah, so I think degrees are not. I think people shouldn't go into them so casually. Like I said, I was like really lucky with my position. I think I would probably, if someone didn't have like a really good access to living somewhere where they really wanted to and they didn't know what they were going to do, I would suggest community college first. It's always possible to transfer to a different degree, and there's also, people look down on tech programs, but like those can lead to some really good paying, very stable jobs, going to a trade school. So I definitely would look into that if you also aren't motivated by traditional academia.
Yeah, I went to a community college. I don't have a degree. I think my mom uses a degree. My dad has one but doesn't. I think it totally varies. I think people do not treat it nearly as much like the investment that it is. Like, if you were considering putting that amount of money into literally anything else, like you would do a very, very serious analysis of what that investment is likely to return. You would do an investment of like the job placements of the industry you're looking to go into, of the school itself. Like you would do a cost benefit analysis on it. And I feel like no one does that. And whatever, you're 18, like you're not necessarily going to do that, but it's shocking that more parents don't do that. And I also think that, the ubiquity of degree as requirement is more just like a way to sift people out by class and economic status, essentially, than it is by any kind of intelligence or skill set. Same with unpaid internships. I initially lied sometimes about having a degree to get my foot into certain doors, and I don't regret it. I would encourage anyone who like comes from like a not super economically privileged background and like didn't necessarily have the ability or the connections to put themselves severely in debt to go to school. I'm not going to like sit up here and tell you like everyone should lie, but like I do think that for a lot of jobs, the degree thing is a completely arbitrary requirement, and finding creative ways around that don't involve putting yourself severely into debt for jobs that you could do well, regardless of degree, is not a morally compromised thing. Like I think that the whole system that we have set up, as we've detailed many times in many videos, is itself morally corrupt. So navigating it in any way you need to, I think, is totally fine. Now, obviously, if you're going to be like a doctor, you need certain degrees. But if you're going to do like, work in any of the fields that we work in, who cares? Like we've worked with people who have Ivy League degrees who are terrible to work with, and we've worked with people who have no degree who are phenomenal to work with. So
yeah, for sure. I was also just looking up, there's an organization called Opportunity at Work that exists to help employers and people with non-traditional career trajectories, non-traditional training and experience, find skilled jobs. And I think there's like more and more, and also like all of their own staff is all people without degrees, as far as I know. I'll check that, but yeah,
nice.
Definitely a good place to look to if you're a person who has career aspirations but doesn't necessarily think they need to get a degree.
Last question. How do you stop comparing yourself when you see others achieving pretty notable professional success? I'm in my 40s, but I feel somewhat stuck after taking an 8-year detour into a niche area of my industry that I didn't realize until it was too late is kind of where careers go to die. It isn't viewed in my industry as having transferable value. Meanwhile, I see friends making partner at their law firms, friends in my old industry now getting book deals, and former corporate peers becoming managing directors. My successes seem pretty minor in comparison. This absolutely isn't where I envision my career going. While I try to crawl out of this career hole, how do I celebrate friends and contemporary successes without feeling like a total failure?
Oh, Well, you're not a total failure. I think that I would use the data of like what you're feeling when you see somebody succeeding and the envy that you're feeling. Like, what is it that you're feeling envious about? Is it like, do you want to be a partner at a law firm? Like, do you want to be a lawyer? If you're not already a lawyer, you probably don't want that. Or if you do, that there's like a pretty clear path to how to get that. So I would think about what it is that you're feeling envious of, and try to pinpoint like what it is, rather than just like a bubble of success. Like, I think that if you're just feeling resentful of anybody else being successful, I think that's maybe a moment to do some soul searching and some introspection, because usually it should tell you something like, what is it about their success that you're actually feeling jealous of? Like, is it because they have enough money to go do trips and stuff that you don't get to do? That should tell you something, because then you want to work towards having more money or more flexibility or whatever it is that they have that you want more of. I think, you have to like put yourself in those positions. Like, do you actually want the jobs that they have that you see them succeeding at? Probably not. Like, I like my friend I was just talking about, who's like a big performer. Like, every time he like has some like minor success or like big success or whatever, I don't feel envious of him. And it is easy to be supportive and happy for him, because I don't want to be doing what he's doing. And I see him and he like, it's so time consuming. It takes so much energy to do what he's doing. And I don't want to do that. I value my, I'm not a performer, but I also value my freedom in my own life and like the life I've built for myself. That's extremely different, because now like some of his success could just like very well take him to another state for a period of time if he's filming something or a project gets picked up. I don't ever want to have a life where I don't get to decide where I'm living or like live in a place I want to be living. So, you just have to tune out the noise. Like, somebody having a professional success in a career that's very different than yours is like just not even something that's worth comparing to. But if it's because they have access to something in their life that you would also like, maybe that's something to take into your new career journey.
Totally. We're in triage mode. Couple things. First of all, anything that makes you feel even slightly non-optimal for even a second, get it out of your face. Truly. You cannot have stuff like that on your feeds. Like, I'm assuming you're seeing a lot of this stuff on social media or, God forbid, LinkedIn. You got to get it out of your face. Like, I generally don't feel a ton of career envy, but what I do feel is career bitterness toward people who I don't think deserve what they have, because I know that they operate in ways, or are unethical, or don't pay people fairly, or the quality of their work is really bad, what have you. I have a sense of like cosmic injustice towards certain people. Now, am I right? I mean, of course, I'm right about everything. No, I'm kidding. But am I right? Who cares? It doesn't matter. The point is, unless I'm going to do something about it, I got to get it out of my face, because it's not healthy for me to be experiencing that feeling. So there are sometimes people that I need to follow for career reasons, immediately muted, because when I see it, it's just going to make me mad. So getting everything out of your face that makes you feel bad is step number one, because you are just harming yourself by having that stuff visible to you. And I really think that for a lot of people, like myself very much included, like if I have something removed from my feed for a couple days, I literally forget about it. It doesn't occur to me. So that's step number one, is just stop the bleeding, because it's not going to help you. Step number two, I totally agree with your point. Identify what it is you're actually envious of. This is just one woman's take, but listening to that question, most of what you seemed to be envious of or insecure about feels rather superficial. It's based on titles. It's based on, external accolades. Like, are these people satisfied in their jobs? Do they have a good work-life balance? Do they, are they making good changes in the world? Are they doing, progressive, ethical, thoughtful work? Like, none of that is addressed here. All we see are like the shiny titles, which, to your point, I think are the most kind of superfluous things to be kind of aiming toward. So I totally would agree with that, is like really decipher what it is about it that you are actually feeling envious of. And then number three, and perhaps most importantly, is like, is the reason that you want to make these career moves because of how they're going to perceive you or how other people are going to perceive you? Or is it because it will actually make your life better? Because what it sounds like from your question is that you feel like a quote failure because your professional accolades do not stack up to these other people's professional accolades. But if that is what you're striving for, if what you want is just to have a more superficially or externally impressive career for the way that other people will perceive it, like that is a recipe for disaster. That is what we should be running away from in our life choices. For all I know, you might have a much better quality of life than the person who's like a partner at a big law firm, which I would almost guarantee is the case. Also, book deals. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to take this 1 second to say this. Your friend's getting book deals. Congratulations. Now, if they're writing, now it depends on the kind of book they're writing. They may be doing vanity deals. We don't even know if they actually got a deal. Average deal size, unless you're like a really big author, is, they'll range from like 10 grand to like 50 grand. They're not a ton of money, especially because it's divided up over 4 payments that come out over the course of like 2 years. The vast majority of books do not earn out their advances. They sell under 2,000 copies. Like, the process seems really glamorous from the outside because we're not privy to a lot of the details of how this works. And I don't say that to say that it's not still a huge achievement to get a deal. It is. Very few people do statistically, but it's important to understand that, again, what you're highlighting is the very, very superficial, like the title, the announcement, the, external validation, the thing that you get to post on social media that other people congratulate you for. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that you're exposing yourself, it sounds like, to things that are really bad for your mental health. So scrape the plate on your social media usage. Like, let's get rid of most of these people. You don't have to unfollow them, just mute them, get them out of your face, and then do a serious, to Holly's point, inventory of what you're actually envious of and what you're actually striving toward. And let's make sure none of it is just about what looks good on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I do think this person sounded like they maybe were unhappy with there not being any more growth in their job, though. And so maybe if you are feeling like you're at a dead end spot, I also would say don't feel discouraged, because I also know that they said that they're in their 40s. So don't feel discouraged by having a career like the career you want, or like the successful career that's like not your whole career. I don't think that's healthy. Like, everybody can always make a career change, and that's like makes you a cool person. I have an aunt who went back to med school to be a doctor at 40, and I don't think that sounds like what you're doing, but like, it's not like 40 is like young. Yeah.
But to your point, like, that's true that is like a beacon in that question of like, maybe you're dissatisfied with a lack of advancement, but that's the only thing worth addressing in that question. Yeah. Not in general, but like for you, that's the only thing worth listening to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Also, yeah, like, and what Chelsea said, like, if you're happy with what you're doing and you're making enough money, it doesn't really matter what your job title is. And like, if it's like impressive to other people, as long as what you're happy doing. I think that's like the ultimate thing. Like, it doesn't matter what your job title is.
I know a lot of people with book deals. I know a lot of successful lawyers. I know a lot of people who have all the things you're listing. And trust me that a lot of them, they are always 2 seconds from a total mental breakdown. Like, they are not living their best lives.
It's like that TikTok where, like, if she's taking care of herself and she's running every day and she's meal prepping and she's succeeding at work, she's 5 seconds away from a total nervous breakdown. Truly. It's so funny too, because all the people I know who like are professional writers are like, they're just constantly like, get me out of this hellhole industry. Like, I can't stand this anymore. And then all the people who I know who are like big law lawyers are like dying to be authors. Oh yeah.
I'm like, we need a Freaky Friday, you guys, because then you'll realize the grass is also brown on the other side.
I think like my husband works in tech, and I think he's experiencing like he's got a really like stable kind of at a job at like a kind of older corporation, and he's not at a startup, and he has all these friends with startup bonuses and all of this stuff. But then like tech is going through what media has been going through for like a decade with all of these layoffs, and he's just like, not me. Like, no. Couldn't be me. Like, it's really good cure for envy when you just unfortunately see people getting laid off from jobs you maybe wanted at some point because they're too unstable as companies.
Your husband has like a 1960s job where like he has like a pension and like works like a solid he has like a government job, except it's in tech. It's amazing.
Yeah. I love it for him.
He's going to retire at like 65 on the dot, or like whatever, 62 on the dot, having only worked at this company, and they're going to give him a gold pen.
Yeah.
And like they'll throw him like what do they do? Like a little goodbye party at like a VA hall or something.
It's in Manhattan. They might go to like a legit place.
Or go to a steakhouse.
Yeah, a steakhouse, yeah.
I want to score an invite. Okay. All right. So thank you for joining. Let's do that quick. What do you do again that people should join?
The Society at TFD, either here on YouTube if you're watching this, or over on our Patreon.
And what is the book of the month?
The book of the month is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and we will be discussing it on Tuesday, April 25th.
We love to see it. All right, guys, thank you for joining, and I will see you next Monday on an all-new episode of The Financial Confessions. Bye.